Anyway, good evening, Professor Padma. I am Michael Left, and I'm joined by Andrew Homsey, Qiling Tang, also known as Angie Tang, and Xianti Yang. And today we'll be presenting you on the impact of the Chinese Communist Revolution, which took place between 1945 through 1949, and its impact on the economy of Taiwan. Next slide, please.
Some of the overview, we're going to talk to you about the background information of Taiwan, as well as what is called the brain gain, the national purpose of Taiwan, and the US foreign policy that was implemented in Taiwan.
To start with some background information between Taiwan and China. Taiwan is an island that lies about 150 kilometers off the southeast coast of the Chinese mainland. The Republic of China consists of the island of Taiwan and some smaller islands that are nearby, such as Penghu Group. The land area of Taiwan is approximately 36,000 square kilometers. Only 25% of island is cultivated. Most land area are mountainous. Taiwan's estimated population at that time is around 21 million, and with the average density of 581.8 person per square kilometer. Taiwan was ruled by the Chinese Ming loyalist Zheng Gong for 22 years. However, Taiwan was ceded to Japan after 1894 to 1895 Sino-Japanese War. In the year of 1845, Taiwan became a province of Republic of China, the Communist. But the turning point of Taiwan started in the year of 1954. The US government's anti-communist policy made it Taiwan's strongest ally. The US signed a mutual security treaty with Taiwan and gave significant economic and military aid until 1965. Taiwan's economy was benefited from the US unrestricted market and domestic reform. Taiwan transferred from industrial policy to advanced IT industry. During Taiwan's high-tech industry, Taiwan's strategy played second mover or subcontract, profited through efficient and low-cost manufacturing and timely delivery. Taiwan captured a large share of IT worldwide, ranks right after the US, China, and Japan. China has been trying to nowadays, China has been trying to claim Taiwan back as their territory. However, China has no military control with Taiwan, and Taiwan is currently under one country, two system, but insisted that China renounce communism before any direct contact was made. Next slide.
So let's go back a little bit and talk about what happened before the Communist Revolution. Taiwan was actually a colony that was under Japan up to 1945, before the Communist Revolution in China. They seceded from Taiwan because of World War II. Taiwan was basically forced to supply sugar and rice because that was kind of an exploit for Japan. And Japan had some military industrialization, and all of that was left behind after Japan seceded. There was a population in Taiwan of more than 50% who were farmers, and 70% of those farmers were actually just renting land from Japanese, and they weren't able to industrialize themselves. So in short, the Taiwanese people weren't exactly the most trained when it came to industrialization, as well as they didn't have a lot of money because Japan sort of was exploiting Taiwan for their own personal gain. Next slide.
So as a result of all this, Taiwan was in a great position for a massive brain gain. And the concept of brain gain is that, sorry, I'm blanking. I'm going to cut this out later. The concept of a brain gain is that like a country goes from very low human capital to suddenly a very high human capital in a short amount of time. And this happened because of the mass exodus of basically the Chinese elite going from China to Taiwan. Before the revolution, the population of Taiwan was mostly just non-industrialized farmers without a whole lot of skills or anything. But after the revolution, it was just a whole bunch of like elites, industrialists, investors, high skilled laborers, and so on and so forth. And so this put Taiwan in a spot to industrialize very rapidly. Before they didn't have the skills, and now they do.
So manufacturing in the 1950s started right away. Once the KMT moved in, it started with the old Japanese factories and primarily focused on food processing, textiles, and building materials. A lot of those from, once again, the factories that the Japanese left behind. The KMT also had a high focus on education, primarily subsidizing basic education rather than advanced education. There was also a high immigration after the Communist Revolution from all the people fleeing in as well. This focus on basic education and increase in available labor led to the rapid development of its manufacturing industry to a more labor-intensive products like consumer electronics and plastic. Next slide, please. Thank you. On top of that, they continued immigration throughout, keeping their population high. They invited foreign experts, workers, and investors. On top of that, they had a pretty good economy that kept their workers domestic, from the relatively comfortable and rising wages, secure jobs, and the booming economy. Next slide.
So another effect of the revolution was that the people of Taiwan kind of developed this sense of like national purpose. They just kind of lost their homeland and everything. And so they're all kind of united in the goal of basically recovering the mainland. Now, of course, this was basically in the 50s and 60s. This didn't really become feasible when China actually started like rapidly developing. But basically, the result of this was the Taiwanese people were really focused on just industrializing and globalizing to really build up the island of Taiwan to make it competitive with the mainland to hopefully one day take it back. And also a result of national purpose is that the government wanted to do like anything to prevent like any sort of communist peasant uprising. They were learning from the mistakes of the Qing dynasty by giving former landlords shares in state-owned enterprises and deregulating interest rates, causing more liberalized financial sector. And this also in turn led to rapid industrialization.
I'll be expanding a little bit more on some of Michael's points. They really strived for a high level of economic equality. First of all, there was the land reform to make farmers owners instead of renters after the Japanese occupation. For the most part, it was a four-step reform. First off, leasing government-owned land to the tenants, and then placing a restriction on the shares of privately owned farmland, selling the public land to the farmers, and then finally the land to the tiller program. The land to the tiller program is expected to be one of the higher reasons of how so many of the farmers ended up becoming landowners as well. In just a few years, it went up to 90% of the farmers owned the land they were working on. Now, in order for the farmers to get the land, the older landlords had to sell up their land, and they were both given shares as well as getting paid. But the shares basically incentivized them to invest in these enterprises in these new industries rather than just kind of holding on to your money. So it really started the investment kind of mindset. back then it was the 4 state-owned enterprises, which included Taiwan Cement, Taiwan Pulp and Paper, Taiwan Agriculture and Forest, and the Taiwan Industry and Mining Corporations. After that, they also kept a high inflation control in order to keep inflation low, and together with deregulated interest rates, they were able to create a positive real interest rate, which created a rapid rise in both domestic saving rates and efficiency of investment. The Taiwan's government desire to really control their economy and inflation, kind of like how Michael stated earlier, really stemmed from the communist revolution and the hyperinflation and economic turmoil that happened right before. Like he said, they didn't want to make the same mistakes again. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, you can skip this one.
So one thing to consider is basically like the United States' foreign policy in East Asia. And that is primarily to basically contain the spread of communism in East Asia. This is really due to the idea of the domino theory, which is that like if one country falls to communism, then this could eventually spread to neighboring regions and then eventually the United States. So basically, like for example, if Taiwan falls, then that could spread to Japan and South Korea, and then the United States is basically pushed entirely off East Asia. Not really good for our interests. So in response to this, the United States provided like lots of aid to Taiwan. This included just regular trade, but also stuff like foreign direct investment, and so on and so forth. And another thing to consider is that like it wasn't just financial aid, but it was also military aid. So this included like the Mutual Defense Treaty, which the U.S. made with Taiwan. And so as a result, this Taiwan didn't really need that big of a defense budget. So much more of their money could go towards like social programs and so on. So this also really helps with industrialization. And so this helps with industrialization because most of the foreign aid from the United States went directly into just capital formation for manufacturing. So yeah.
And finally, in conclusion, we gave you some information about the background. Taiwan is a 36,000 square kilometer island, 150 kilometers off the southeast coast of China. We talked to you about the brain gain, where Taiwan suddenly started gaining more human capital and became a lot more economically advanced. National purpose, Taiwan wanted to globalize and improve the economy of the mainland, and the US foreign policy was the fact that the US was wanting to both support Taiwan and also prevent the spread of communism that is going on in China and Russia. That is our presentation. Thank you very much.